Welcome to Becoming Leaders, the Power of Authenticity, Mentors, and Role Models. Thank you for joining us on Zoom and live streaming on Facebook. I'm Ginger Byrne with the Japan America Society of Tennessee. This is the fourth 2020 Women's Leadership Forum session presented by JAST, and thanks to the generous contributions of our premier corporate sponsors. Presenting sponsor, Mitsui & Company USA Inc., event patron, Nissan North America, event sponsors, B&A Nashville International Airport, Aviation Golf Classic, Bridgestone America's Trust Fund, Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, the Mitsui USA Foundation, the Japan Foundation Center for Global Partnership, and Fifth Third Bank. It's been an amazing few weeks with fascinating, thought-provoking, and fun virtual sessions about women in history, anime, manga, and fiction. And today we are very excited about ending this year's series by featuring 5 remarkable women. They will inspire and motivate you. There will be some time for your questions. Our moderator, Jody Shoup, will let you know when to submit your questions. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can ask your questions by clicking on the Q&A button on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. After you click on the Q&A button, you will see a Submit a Question prompt. If you're joining us live streaming on Facebook, there will be a place for you to submit your questions at the bottom of the video or to the side, depending upon what device you're using. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Jody Shoup. Jody earned her bachelor's degree in Asian and Middle Eastern Studies from the University of Pennsylvania. As part of her curriculum, she spent a year of study at the Stanford Kyoto Center for Japan Studies in Kyoto, Japan. Jody earned her MBA from the University of Kentucky. Jody serves as a commercial relationship manager with Fifth Third Bank. In her role, she is responsible for establishing and enhancing relationships with Japanese-owned subsidiaries operating in North America. Jody is experienced in the cultural and business aspects of Japanese corporations and is knowledgeable about the automotive industry. Prior to joining Fifth Third Bank, Jody worked with a Japanese automotive OEM and a Japanese engineering firm for 10 years. She spent half of that time living in Japan and is fluent in Japanese. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you, Ginger. And thank you all for joining us here virtually today. It's definitely fortuitous timing to be talking about women in leadership, particularly this week, as we have a female vice president-elect here in the US. And in Japan this week, the Keidanren had announced a goal for 30% of females in management positions. So looking great on both sides of the pond. It is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Consul-General Fukushima. Consul-General Fukushima assumed her post as Consul-General of Japan in Nashville in December 2019. This is her 3rd diplomatic assignment in the US. She received a Master of Law in Diplomacy from the Fletcher School of Tufts University in 1985 and served at the Consulate-General of Japan in New York. The Consulate-General has extensive experience working with the United Nations. She served as the Program Officer at the United Nations University from 2003 to 2006 and as the Founding Director of the UN Women Japan Liaison Office, both based in Tokyo. Consul-General Fukushima joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan in 1981 after receiving a Bachelor of English Literature from Sophia University. She has held a variety of posts at MOFA headquarters in Tokyo, most recently serving as the Director of Diplomatic Archives. Prior to that, she held several posts in the Minister's Secretariat, including as Senior Coordinator of the Public Diplomacy Strategy Division, as well as Assistant Chief of Protocol. She served overseas at the Embassy of Japan in Ireland and the Embassy of Japan in Thailand. Consul-General Fukushima is married with 2 adult daughters. And with that, it is my pleasure to turn the speaker over to Consul-General Fukushima, if you'd like to start your video.
Thank you, Jody, for your kind introduction. Hello, everyone. It's nice to join you today. And I would like to thank JAST for your kind invitation to speak at this forum. In relation to this topic, as noted, it is very encouraging to celebrate the election of the first female US Vice President, Kamala Harris. Today, I would like to talk about a bit of my experience, the state of women's leadership in the world, and the points I think are important to enhance women's leadership. As introduced, I have been working at the Japanese Foreign Ministry since 1981. I have two daughters who have just turned 29 and 24 years old. So for a fairly long period of my career, I was also rearing children. I am happy to say that I felt I was given an equal opportunity as that of my male colleagues in the Foreign Ministry. But I faced many challenges in balancing my career and my family engagement. I experienced no vacancy in nurseries, no availability of care for sick children, as well as long working hours, many business trips, and overseas assignments. Without the help of the people surrounding me, including caretakers of my daughters at various places in the world, my bosses and colleagues at offices, my family members, especially my husband and my mother, I wouldn't have been able to continue my work up until today. In addition, my role models had a great influence over me. In my childhood, I read about Madame Curie, a renowned scientist who dedicated her life to the research of radium. I was impressed with her strong will and commitment to her work. After growing up and joining the Foreign Ministry, I have admired the work of Sadako Ogata, who headed UNHCR and later JICA, that is Japan International Cooperation Agency. I was moved by her outstanding leadership and dedication. As more personal role models, I had a few female senior colleagues within the Foreign Ministry and the UN. They are pioneers who developed their successful careers while balancing their private lives. They paved the way for younger female colleagues like me. I was greatly inspired and encouraged by them, and they advised and supported me at various stages of my life and helped me to move forward. These people taught me to have the courage to challenge opportunities, difficulties, and obstacles to make my way. Now, I am hoping to relay the baton of support I received from them to my younger generations, including my colleagues and friends, as well as my daughters. As I worked at the UN Women Japan Liaison Office, I have learned many things about gender equality and empowerment of women. I would like to take this opportunity to share some of my findings about the state of women's leadership in the world. Overall, in the long run, women's leadership in the world has been improving, but the progress is slow and there's a need to accelerate it. Taking a look at women in politics, according to the data entitled Women in Parliaments, which is published by the International Parliamentary Union, the world average of the ratio of female members of the lower house in 2019 was 24.3%. That is more than double the figure in 1995, which was 11.3%. There are countries like Rwanda and Spain, which have employed quota systems and achieved equal representation. Even without quota systems, a country like New Zealand has achieved political representation exceeding 30%. In the US, it is 23.4%, and Japan is 10.1%. Even though Japan is also progressing, the speed of the progress is slow, and quite a few countries fall in this category and have a lot to tackle. Then, for example, in Japan's case, what are the obstacles to having more female representation in politics? One of the most rigid obstacles, I would say, is our awareness. The world of politics in Japan is still male-oriented, and there seems to be a psychological barrier in people's minds about women entering into politics. In addition, Japanese diet members need to travel between Tokyo and their constituencies. When women play primary roles in housework and child care in their families, it is difficult for them to balance political career and family engagement. How about women in business? Many countries are still facing the need to increase female leaders in the business world. In addition, women tend to be in unstable working conditions, such as being part-timers. In many families, wives tend to be tasked with more housework and child rearing. Recently, COVID-19 has negatively affected the working environment for women, and obstacles to women's leadership in the economic field have been increasing. Many women are engaged in essential work, including healthcare and transport and logistics services, and they contribute greatly to our response to the pandemic. In addition, the majority of caretakers at home and in our communities are also women. Women's commitments in response to the pandemic, economic recovery and growth, social welfare, education, disaster and conflict prevention, and others will greatly contribute to making our world a better place to live. So it is important to acknowledge women's contributions to society, believe in the power of women, and the potential of women's leadership. What else is important to enhance women's leadership? Yes, we need to change our awareness by getting rid of gender lenses. Role models and supporters would enhance women's empowerment. Male supporters are also important to empower women and make women's leadership possible. Young generations will lead our future. It is important to get them interested in this issue and get involved. It is also crucial to empower young women to believe in themselves, overcome challenges, and develop their career while balancing them with their private lives. We need to understand the challenges that these women are facing and support them. Collaboration among us is crucial to enhance women's leadership. It might be difficult to take big strides all at once, but if everyone takes a small step and acts together, it can be the beginning of a big step forward. I hope that today's forum will be a good opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul-General Fukushima, for sharing your perspective. Next, I'm pleased to welcome President Dannelle Whiteside. Dannelle began her tenure as interim president of Austin Peay State University on August 10th, 2020. Her appointment by the APSU Board of Trustees makes her the first Black president of the more than 90-year-old institution. President Whiteside originally joined the university in 2017 as Austin Peay's general counsel. In the spring of 2019, she was named vice president for legal affairs. During her career at Austin Peay, she has also served as secretary to the board of directors. Prior to her time at APSU, President Whiteside served as general attorney for the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, general counsel for Tennessee State Board of Education, and district policy advisor for the Metro Nashville Public Schools. She was recently named to the 2020 class of the Millennial Leadership Initiative, a premier leadership development program of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. The Millennium Leadership Initiative provides individuals traditionally underrepresented in the highest ranks of post-secondary education with the opportunity to develop skills, gain a philosophical overview, and build the network and knowledge needed to advance to the presidency. In 2019, President Whiteside was named to the inaugural cohort of the Tennessee Higher Education Leadership and Innovation Fellows Program. That program is designed to develop the next generation of enterprise leaders in higher education, according to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. President Whiteside received her Juris Doctorate from the University of Arkansas Fayetteville with honors and received her bachelor's degree in Human Development and Family Studies from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, graduating summa cum laude. With that, it is my pleasure to welcome President Dannelle Whiteside.
Thank you, Jody. I appreciate that. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. We're going to see how this works. Okay, we're good now. So good afternoon. As she said, my name is Dannelle Whiteside, and I serve here as interim president at Austin Peay State University. I'm truly excited to be here today to talk about women in leadership. Actually, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm pleased to be here with the Japan America Society of Tennessee. Thank you to Ginger Byrne and the leadership of JAS for the invitation to speak to you all today. A special hello to Consul-General Fukushima as well. It's truly an honor to be here participating virtually with all of you. I know this has been a very interesting time in the last several months for us, and so I know that a lot of people have Zoom fatigue, so bear with me. I'm going to try to make this engaging and hopefully as inspiring and empowering, and that you can leave here with something that gives you the call to action to use your authentic voice to change this world. I love the theme of becoming leaders, perspectives on the power of role models, mentors, and authenticity. We are all becoming. It means that you really never arrive. You're always getting better. You're always learning more. And as long as you have another day ahead of you, you will always be becoming the person that you are for tomorrow. I also love that we are highlighting the power of role models, mentors, and authenticity. I believe that authenticity is my superpower. I wouldn't be here without my role models and my mentors shaping who I am, but I'm also nothing if I don't have an authentic voice. And so I hope that comes through to you today. I'm going to walk a little bit down memory lane, and let me just share, when I talked to Ginger and her team about what I was going to talk to you about today, we went back and forth and bantered about the theme, and they wanted me to talk about my path, my past, being a Black woman in America, being a woman in America, and man, if we spent every day and for an hour for the next 30 years, we could not do any of those topics justice. So I'm going to do a very high level discussion about all of those things, and I look forward to the Q&A where we can dive in some more. So let's talk about my upbringing. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and I had two amazing and determined parents, Dr. David L. and Deborah Walker. That's them right there. They were getting together, going out for a fancy night on the town. They were my ultimate role models. My dad showed me creativity, respect for others' differences, and ambition. He earned his PhD from Vanderbilt's Peabody College at the young age of 24. Let's see, and then after that, they had me and my brother. So he went on to become a university professor, a university dean, and then a vice chancellor with the Tennessee Board of Regents. In many ways, I have chartered a similar path to his in terms of my own career. He had the ultimate goal of being a university president, but unfortunately he passed away at the age of 49, and he was working his way there, but he never got there. So in some ways, as I walk this path and I am sitting at the seat of the university president, I feel him with me all the time, because I know he's super proud that I was able to carry on with the dream that he had that became then my own dream. But he was also a musician, and he shared with me his love for music. One of the last concerts that we went to together was to hear Luciano Pavarotti at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. And when my father passed away, he left me all of his music, which I've had on occasion to dive into. Sheet music that some he wrote himself, and albums galore from Michael Jackson to Antonio Vivaldi. My mom, let's see, do I have her? No. My mom, as you can see there, she is the steady hand in our home, or she was a steady hand in our home. From her, I learned discipline. I learned the importance of filling your day with things that mattered. and having the tenacity to withstand anything that comes. If any of you are involved in the practice of law, you know that law school is no joke. And so I called her from the law library's bathroom in my first year of law school, and I told her that I wanted to quit. And she sternly reminded me that I come from a long line of women who withstood so many challenges, and that it was not in my inheritance to give up. She reminded me of the saying when I was studying for the bar exam and I feared I wouldn't pass. And she's the first person to remind me of my greatness and to celebrate my success. I mentioned the two of them because I would not be who I am or where I am if it were not for them being my role models. As I have been on my journey of becoming a leader, I lean on them constantly, which, as I said, sounds odd because my dad is not here, but I think of him often at my age and what decisions he would have made. And that thought alone has tended to guide me, especially as of late in this position. Besides being my biggest cheerleader, my mom is also the world's best grandmother and teacher. She currently watches my son, who is almost 2 years old. He'll be 2 years old next month. And she watches him. She's watched him every day since I went back to work when he was 4 months old. So knowing that he is loved and cared for gives me the freedom to do my work. I also mentioned my parents as role models because many of us are leaders in our homes, caring for our partners and our children. Some of you are aunts or uncles to children who look up to you and admire you. And some of you may be moms to kids in the neighborhood or at your church if you don't have children of your own. Remember that one day they will stand up and talk about how you helped shape who they become. And I want you to ask yourself, what will their story be of you? And let that question and the answer that you have lead you into thinking about how you can best be role models for the young people in your life. Now, I have been so blessed to be mentored my entire life. My first mentor was my kindergarten teacher. Her name was Mrs. Teresa Cleggett. And Ms. Cleggett noticed that I was a leader. She always asked me to read aloud to the class. She would constantly give me support and encouragement. And she knew that I could sing. So she asked me to sing Whitney Houston's Greatest Love of All for my kindergarten graduation. I was so nervous when it started. In fact, the day before the kindergarten graduation, we had a rehearsal and I stormed off. I didn't even sing my song. I stormed off crying. But her confidence in me, and with the help of my dad, who was a voice professor, on kindergarten graduation day, I stood up there and sang that song proudly. A few months later, which is the photo I'm going to show you, I mentioned that my dad was a professor. He was a voice professor at Tennessee State University. And so Tennessee State's band asked me to sing that same song during Tennessee State's halftime show. And so this is me at 6 years old singing in front of a crowd of 70,000 people with a 100-piece band backing me up. So that's the confidence that a great mentor, even in kindergarten, can give you. That once you tackle that first hurdle and they give you that support and encouragement, you can literally sing in front of thousands. Another mentor of mine was Caroline Terranova. She was my violin teacher, and I played the violin starting in the 4th grade, and she gave me private lessons until my senior year of high school. She used to tell me after each lesson, "You are smart enough to go to Harvard." And I didn't go to Harvard, nor did I think that what she was saying meant I should go to Harvard. But what I took from her, what her constantly saying that to me did for me, was to give me the confidence to dream and have high expectations. Because a lot of times when you are a child of color, people put low expectations on you and low aim, which is really a discouraging plight. And so I appreciated her for just always speaking into me that I had greatness and I could achieve and accomplish great things. Now, I have been mentored by so many people in my life, but one of my newest mentors, but perhaps maybe one of the most impactful, was Elisa White, and she was the former president here at Austin Peay. She hired me to work here in 2017 as general counsel and secretary to the board of trustees. She didn't know me from Adam, and we had a great conversation during the interview. She actually told me, "I need someone to walk on water." And I told her that I think I can do it, even though in deep down inside, I was pretty nervous because that's a high burden to meet. But I never forget sitting in her office one day shortly after completing my first year here at Austin Peay. And she said to me, "You will be a university president." And that's actually her sitting behind me, looking up to me, which is one of my favorite pictures because it really does demonstrate how she pushed me to be successful. So she told me in her office that day, "You will be a university president, and I will do everything in my power to make sure you get there." Now imagine having that person to call out a dream that you've had on your own. I never said that out loud to anyone. I believed and I wanted to be a university president, but I never told anybody that. And so the fact that she identified that in me, not only identified it, but then committed to helping me advance, has been so key and critical to who I am today. And it gave me the permission to go confidently toward that path. She nominated me and provided support for me to participate in every leadership program under an opportunity under the sun. And she eventually promoted me to vice president for legal affairs, partly because I worked really hard and I garnered a great reputation on campus. But also she told me that it was because she knew that I needed to have a more portable title like vice president if I were going to advance. Fast forward to today and where I am, that support changed my life. And I want to put a pin there because as you are leading other women, it's important for you to identify the leader in them because that will give them courage to lead on their own. And it's not just, you can't just stop at identifying the leader in them, but you have to force them into leadership opportunities and open doors for them because women lots of times don't ask for it themselves. Now we have an opportunity as women to learn to advocate for ourselves more, but if you are leading a woman, it is up to you to help her break that glass ceiling. So you may know the common theme among the people that I named as mentors. They're all women. Now, granted, men have also played major parts in my becoming. However, I can emphatically say that women have overwhelmingly been the game changers in my life. And I want to ask you, who can say the same of you? How have you been a game changer in the life of another young woman? And how have you gone out of your way to see that another woman reaches her goals? Now, I'm going to pivot a little bit to authenticity and end with my family. This is my husband, Sean, and my son, Donovan, who, as I said, will be two very shortly. Becoming a leader is all about finding your authentic voice. People connect to those people who have the courage to be who they are without pretense. And this is my challenge to you as women. As I said, authenticity is my superpower. I say often that if it's up to you to find your authentic voice, and you really have to have the courage to be who you are. Because if you don't and you try to be someone else, you fail twice. You fail once at trying to be that other person and failing at being yourself. So it really is important to find your authentic voice. Your role models and your mentors help you to create a blueprint for your path. It is your path and only you can define it. But ultimately, your walking your path is not just for you. It's really for those that you serve. And so once you find your authentic voice, you have to use it. There are so many obstacles out there for women to lead authentically. The first of which is being a woman in a world that is still primarily led by men. I mean, the fact that we have been a country for hundreds of years now, and we just had a woman who will be serving as the vice president of the United States, still says that we have a long way to go to break that glass ceiling, and that men are still primarily leading, at least in America and in most parts of the world. Women all around the world have faced challenges to their very legitimacy and their leadership. Japanese women and American women have that in common. If you think about the history of the Japanese women's movement, which dates back to the 1870s, across the globe, American women were sharing in that same movement at that same time, fighting for the right to vote in their own country. Black women faced additional challenges to that legitimacy. When white women won the right to vote 100 years ago, which we celebrate this year, even though Black women marched alongside them, it was another 60 years before Black women could vote in America. There are parallels even today. In Japan, women make up over half of college-going rates in Japan. The same is true for American women who lead the country in degree completion. Yet the weekly median income of women in America was $719, while men earn a median income of $871. Black women are competitive when it comes to degree attainment in this country, but they make $134 less in weekly income than white women. You should definitely spend some time asking yourself why that is, but then you should also move to asking yourself what you can do to fix it. Women across the world still face obstacles around work-life integration and career advancement. Women with families face challenges like the lack of paid parental leave and limited access to health care. By the way, that affects Black women even more disproportionately. Even in childbirth, Black women's outcomes are far worse. They are twice as likely to die in childbirth as white women, and that's without respect to their education or their income. So there must be another set of circumstances, which I believe has to do with racism in healthcare. Balancing work and family has been exceedingly difficult in COVID, as women have borne the brunt of working at home with children who are having to learn virtually. I was the same. When the university shifted to remote instruction and moved all of our operations remotely in March, my husband was considered an essential worker, and because of that, he went in every day, and I was nervous to send my son to my mom. So my son was at home with me. So we did a lot of things involving Sesame Street and watching television, which up to that point I had not let him do, but that's the only way we survived. So, we're facing a mass exodus of women in the workplace right now. Between August and September of this year, 865,000 women have exited the workforce compared to only 216,000 men. This will have lasting effects on their long-term wages, their ability to seek promotion opportunities, and their ability to re-enter the workforce. Now, what does this have to do with authenticity? I'm glad you asked. Women have to use their authentic voices to change the condition of women all around this world. Men have to listen to those authentic voices and validate them by advancing policies and practices that open the door for women around them. Becoming leaders means having your eye on someone else's struggles and being that voice to do something about it. If you only advocate for issues that affect you, then you are not an advocate at all. Women are the most powerful beings on this planet. I believe that. You could not convince me otherwise. We have the power to change things. We need allies to help us change things, but we have changed things as we've done for generations before. We have the power to change the future for the benefit of generations to come. But it is going to take all of us leading with authenticity, being role models for other women, being role models for the young women in our lives, mentoring other women to show them the way. But I know that we can do this because we can truly do anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Whiteside. Those were some sobering statistics, but thank you for bringing the positive, inspirational message of some of your stories, as well as giving us some calls to action that we can kind of put into practice to help ourselves and other women. So thank you. With that, I'm going to welcome Consul-General Fukushima back on as well, and we'll have a little Q&A. As a reminder, there is a Q&A tab in the bottom. If you would like to submit any questions, please feel free to do so. Also on Facebook, you can submit them that way as well. And while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I have a few questions that we prepared that we would like to hear from you ladies on, so if you don't mind. So you shared some examples of the disproportionate number of working women, President Whiteside, who have been forced to leave the workplace due to the burdens of child rearing and virtual schooling brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Could you share for our audience any examples of opportunities in your life that you might have decided to either accept or forego because you put the needs of others before your own?
I've actually thought about this, and I'm a person that tries to live her life with no regrets. So an example of a time that I almost forewent an opportunity, but I did not. So As you mentioned in my bio, I was general counsel with the Tennessee State Board of Education. I'm from Nashville. All my family's here. Most of my friends are here. And at the time, I was dating someone who eventually became my husband, but he also is from and lived in Nashville. But I got a great opportunity to work with the U.S. Department of Education, which would move me to Philadelphia. I knew no one, and I had established this career and this life. And so I really had a choice of leaving it behind. And when you leave things behind, you don't know if they'll continue, especially when it comes to a relationship that potentially would be long distance. But I thought long and hard about it. And as I said, I'm a person who really tries to live her life with no regrets. And I knew that if I did not take that, I would have always thought, what if I took it? And I would always wonder, what my life would have been like. So I decided to do it. I took a risk. And so it paid off. Ultimately, we ended up being married. He moved there. Everything worked out. But I will say, most recently, as I was approached about whether or not I wanted to serve in this role as interim president, as I mentioned, I have an almost 2-year-old. Most university presidents are older with, empty nesters, children out of the house. And so there was a thought of what would happen to my son, and would I be able to balance that? And as I talked to the women in my life that I trust, every one of them said, you have to do this, and you can, not only do you have to do it, but you can do it. And as I've been, I have to acknowledge I have a lot of support. I mentioned my mom. She lives literally 2 minutes from my house, door to door. So she really does. She's really the glue that keeps this operation all together. But I will say that what I know about women is that we don't let any balls drop. So when women were encouraging me to say, you can do this, it's just because that is how women do. If we have responsibilities, we're going to rise to the occasion. We're not going to let our kids be willy-nilly. We're going to fix their lunch and, then figure out how we're going to meet the demands of the day. That's just how we do. And so I'm really grateful that I stepped out and said, okay, I will step into this interim role. And, it's ended up working out for us. And so if I would encourage women, if you are thinking about an opportunity and you're balancing, what does that mean for your family, and how can you manage it? You can, because you're not going to let any balls drop. You'll have to prioritize self-care, but I want to give confidence to the women on this call that you can do it. You'll rise to the occasion. Don't doubt yourself. And if you doubt yourself, just put it out of your head, because you can do it.
That's great. And you mentioned your mom being the glue. I know Consul-General Fukushima, you referenced your family and friends as well as a big support network. Can you share an example with us that where you either accepted or declined an opportunity because of putting others in front of yourself?
I feel that I'm lucky that I didn't have to do it. But there were times when I wondered whether I should or I had better give up my career in order to, focus on child rearing. There were quite a few occasions like that, especially when my daughters got sick and they missed mom at home. They sometimes say that I'd like a mother who would be waiting for us with some cakes for the snacks. So I thought about that possibility to give up my career. But on those occasions, I was somehow encouraged and supported by my family and also my bosses at the offices to continue my career. So I'm here now, and also the fact that I could draw an clear image of working mother who continues her diplomatic career thanks to my role models within the foreign ministry also helped me to continue.
Yeah, that's great. And that's true. Role models also can give you some inspiration or even some tips and hints on how they've been successful.
Yes.
On that note, I know President Whiteside, you also mentioned having to prioritize self-care when we're juggling all the balls and trying to not let anything drop. Can you kind of speak to that? what things do you do? Do you have like a set time or anything a week that you try to carve out for yourself for a little time, or how do you manage that with your schedule and your family and other responsibilities?
One thing I try to make sure to have a reasonable bedtime, and right before I go to bed, I journal, which is very helpful for me. It's kind of, some people meditate. That's sort of my meditation, just kind of get out all my thoughts for the day. In the morning when I wake up, I try to preserve some time for quietness. So I get up before everybody else, just so that I can have 20 to 30 minutes to either read my Bible or just, listen to some music, decompress. And then, I do try to do things like get away on the weekends, but that's near impossible. So I think for me, if I isolate even 20 to 30 minutes a day just to focus on myself, then I think that goes a long way. I think women think self-care is going to a spa every weekend. And, and when you think about that, it's like, I could never do that. But if you really try to have bite-sized, times for self-care, then I think that's when you can prioritize yourself a little bit each day.
Yeah, that's great. Good advice, even if it involves waking up a little earlier. Consul-General Fukushima, do you have anything that you do kind of to take time for yourself?
Yes. When my younger daughter was just 1 year old, my husband, who also works for the foreign ministry, came back to Japan from his overseas assignment. So he kind of offered to take care of my daughters on Saturdays. So I started to play volleyball at a local club team. And since then, I have been enjoying playing volleyball over 20 years. And in addition to playing volleyball itself, it's a great joy to have teammates and enjoy chatting with teammates on weekend.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
And you're getting exercise, exercise and socializing. That's great.
For the men on the call, that's a great pro tip right there. Because what I find interesting is my husband never lacks for self-care. Like if he's going to run a quick errand, it always turns to 2 or 3 hours. So what I've just learned is, like, when I'm going to run an errand, I'm going to take my time too, because, we have to advocate for ourselves.
What's fair is fair, right?
Yeah.
So you both have children, or, as you mentioned, Dannelle, you might be a mom to somebody in the neighborhood or church, but how do you talk about these issues with your kids or with younger women that you mentor?
Well, I have a niece that is 13. So she and I talk quite a bit about what she wants to do with her life and how she wants to prioritize. I think being available to listen, and then being authentic and being willing to be vulnerable about the struggles that you have as a woman only gives courage to other women to live out their authenticity and take charge of their own futures. So for me, anytime you're mentoring anyone, it's a two-way street. You should always be willing to share their struggles so that they can learn from you and build off of that and do better.
Yeah, that's true. You have to share the highs and the lows, right? Realistic picture. Mm-hmm. Consul-General Fukushima?
Well,
how did you talk about this?
Yes,
sorry.
Children, at least my daughters, are not necessarily always ready to share these issues. So I carefully watch a good timing to talk about it. So I first try to listen to them and see how they're doing, and when they are ready, and maybe especially when they need them, I talk about these issues and give advice and support as necessary.
And do they come to you now that they're older? And
yes, like for example, yes, when my younger daughter had a job, she had a lot to consult with me. Yeah, so I kind of tried to help her.
That's great. Well, she obviously has a strong role model to look up to in you. So, and same with your niece. What are some of the other little steps that we can do for ourselves and for other women to kind of help make strides, or whether they be big or little, in terms of like pay, for example?
I think women themselves can learn how to negotiate, especially with their salaries. I learned very early in my career. My first job I took the first offer they gave me. And if I had known then, I would not have done that. I would have negotiated my salary. When I asked, I'd been there maybe a year, and I said, okay, I've gotten at the time when I took my first job, I didn't have my law degree. I hadn't passed the bar yet. So I passed the bar. And so I went to my boss and I said, hey, can you, I got this new credential, can I get a raise? And the answer was no. And I was totally upset. And I learned then that if you don't ask for it on the front end, you won't get it on the back end. There's no guarantee that you'll get it on the back end. And so for people who are offering jobs to women, knowing and understanding that women are less likely to advocate for making more money when you offer it to them, don't let them take the first offer. And I know that sounds crazy, especially when you're in the business of making money, but do not let them take the first offer that you give them. Tell them you have 24 hours to come back to me. And if they come back to you and say, okay, this is what I think I deserve, and it's the same number, fine. But at least that gives them the courage to ask for what they think they deserve, and you can negotiate.
All right. Yeah, that's great advice. Do you have any tips on that, Consul-General?
Well, probably as an individual, you can do whatever you would like to do and you can choose. But even just to talk about it with your friends or colleagues, I think would be useful. And maybe you may support activities of civil society organization. And I would also like to add that UN Women offers a variety of tools, like they have He4C for people to support the women's empowerment as well as gender equality. They can sign up for He4She. And there are lots of tips like information about concrete action that people can undertake. And at the company level, UN Women has kind of have the principle called WEPS. That's Women's Empowerment Principles for company presidents to sign up and make commitments. And those principles, maybe for the sake of time, I wouldn't go into details, but that kind of encourages or urges the company president to take the initiative to promote gender equality within their company and educate their employees. So maybe if you'd like to, if you're interested, please visit UN Women's website. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great resource that that we can go to. So thank you for sharing that. Maybe if you don't mind, we can get one more question in. How is it that people who want to find a mentor or maybe are interested in mentoring, what are some ways that they can get connected?
I've found mentors in different ways. I've had formal mentors where I've approached them and said, hey, I've observed your career. I've observed how you move and navigate things. And I would love to just have time to sit with you periodically. And then I've had some more mentor-mentee relationships that, have just kind of occurred over time just because we work together. And I would say my example with President White, that was more of an organic. She was my boss, but then she just started to drop these little hints and things that I could take and apply to my life and my career. So, if you would like a mentor, those are two approaches. But I've found that more of the organic mentor-mentee relationships are the ones that last over time. And so if you would like a mentor, just continue to reach out and nourish that relationship, because it goes both ways. But then if you want to mentor someone else, it's really important to take time and just, like I said, for those occasions that may seem ordinary, just drop little hints and tidbits of lessons that you learn, and over time you develop that rapport. So it's, it can be formal or informal, but I found that more of the informal ones have been the most impactful and that we've been able to sustain them.
Yeah, when you're able to make that connection naturally.
Yep. And obviously there's some more formal, like big brothers, big sisters, you know, there are more formal things that you can sign up for to be that mentor. But, you know, like I said, I love the ones that form organically.
Consul-General, do you have any suggestions for people who would like to mentor or would like a mentor?
Yeah, as noted by Dannelle, I think it can be either formal or informal, and also maybe can be kind of very remote person and also close person or more personal existence. And doesn't have to be only one person, you know, being mentor. And so maybe you know, by encounters, you can combine a bit of something from each mentor, and you can have a group of mentors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of meld it together. And
Yes.
One last question, if you ladies don't mind, from one of the attendees. If women are trying to develop their careers, do you think they should put more emphasis or value on education or on getting work experience?
I really think it depends on the area that you're working in. Some areas value work experience over education, and you know there are some areas that are the opposite. But I would, if you're thinking about going back and getting another credential, I would just say, you know, ask yourself what the value added is going to be, and at the very end, you know, what are you going to gain from that, and what doors do you hope that will open? You know, being in the higher education space, I obviously think that everyone should continue to increase their education, but you want to make sure that you're doing it because it's going to provide you a great return on investment at the end of it. Work experience, though, is very important, and at some point you can get all the education in the world, but if you don't have that work experience, then it's going to hinder you in the long run. So things like internships, opportunities to shadow, all of those things also give you great experience that you might get while you're trying to get your education, and get some work experience throughout. So
yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to come and speak with us and sharing your experiences. Really valuable insight, so we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now as we go into the next panel, I'm going to share a couple thoughts. And when I had this opportunity, I said I definitely wanted to speak about authenticity because it's something that I think about a lot, almost on a daily basis, and I have throughout my career and even during college. My first job out of college was working for a Japanese company in Shiga Prefecture, Japan, which is a fairly rural area of Japan. My apartment was just one train stop away from the office, so I didn't see a need to have the company subsidize my train fare as a Japanese company normally would. I saw my commute as a perfect way to get some fresh air and exercise to start and end my day. So my first day of work arrived, I strapped on my inline skates and skated to work in rural Japan in 1998. Needless to say, I turned some heads. But I was used to that being a gaijin or a non-Japanese, so I didn't really think anything of it. Made it to work, changed into my work-issued uniform, and started the day. Soon after, my group head, Kitahara-san, called me to the smoking room to meet with him in HR, and they shared that while they appreciated my vivacious nature, they would prefer that I not skate to work. And I said, but I'm saving the company money. I'm saving the environment. I'm not burdening the Japanese healthcare system because, you know, I'm staying healthy by exercising, which, needless to say, kind of fell on deaf ears. And ultimately, we compromised with their permission for me to bike to work on a sensible commuting bike. But it kind of makes me chuckle thinking about it now, the fact that I would even think that, you know, that might have been a good idea. But I also chuckle thinking about some of the other experiences that I've had along the way, both in Japan as well as in the US, with a Japanese company and now with a financial institution. I honestly have to say that I take pity on my managers who have had to contend with my passionate nature. In all roles that I've had, I have generally been the minority as either the only non-Japanese individual or as a female in an engineering or automotive environment. So sure, that presents its own unique challenges, but rather than viewing it as an obstacle, I have frequently found it as an advantage. In Japan, I used to joke that I was a woman and a half. I had my own role and responsibilities, first in purchasing and then later in sales and project management. Yet my male colleagues would still call on me to send their faxes, and I was part of the Ochatoban, serving 3 o'clock tea and snacks. It actually worked out well for me because it enabled me to bond with the other women in the office, but it also allowed me to connect with the men in the office just based on my role. I kind of forced them to see me as an equal, but in a way that didn't alienate either side. It also taught me culture and traditions and how to properly make and serve tea. Throughout the years, I've learned that having a bit of a chameleon nature can help navigate various settings, corporate and social. I can be the serious, focused businesswoman when the situation calls for it, but I can also be the fun, crazy adventurer when the situation allows it. I'm not pretending to be those people. That's actually me. I'm multifaceted and have a range of interests and feelings and passions just as all of you do. Often we think of authenticity as being inflexible or a fixed representation of who we are. I liked what President Whiteside said when she referenced that we are always becoming, always becoming better. I certainly think that's true because we're not two-dimensional, we're complex individuals. It's certainly important to know yourself and to listen to your thoughts and your heart, but it's equally important to be thoughtful and retrospective. It's essential that you know your core values and that you stand up for what you believe in. We all have a story. We all have a past and a present that make us who we are. You need to believe in your story, but you also have to embrace how it changes over time as you experience more and are exposed to more situations and more people. I suggest that you adopt a playful frame of mind, trying on possible selves, so to speak, to experiment with what fits the new challenges and opportunities that present themselves. Sometimes we might feel like a fake in certain situations, but approach it playfully as you might have as a child dressing up in your mom's high heels or your dad's work gear. Discover new interests, new skills. Push yourself to kind of get outside your comfort zone. Explore and be open to the world. Meet new people. Find an organization that aligns with your values and get involved. And you'll learn more about yourself as you're helping others and your community. Key thing, I think, is being open to constructive criticism. This is one that I struggle with. I try to bring 100% to everything I do. And so when I get feedback, I often will initially feel defensive or assume that the person speaking to me is suggesting that my efforts aren't good enough. It's taken a while. I still have to work at it. But in these instances, I mentally remind myself to stop, listen, and I force myself to just take 10 breaths before I say anything to kind of give myself a chance to process and kind of objectively look at the information that's being shared. And the reality is, it's not like you're going to change automatically, but I do try to take the information that's shared with me and process it, maybe as I'm walking the dog or swimming, just, process at your own pace. And not that you have to change based on what everybody shares, but it never hurts to get other people's perspectives. Work on getting better. That's really what we should be doing, right? While being authentic, but we can still, be like wine and age. Set goals for learning, not just performance. I think that learning goals kind of give us the opportunity to develop valued attributes, but helps keep us from focusing just on progress as a pass-fail activity. It's easy to say, oh, I'm going to, get this degree or hit this target sales or something. And then when we don't, if we fall short, it's easy to kind of be hard on ourselves. And we really are our own worst critics. But if we instead set learning goals, whether it's a hobby or something to do with your job or school, it kind of makes it easier to continue building skills and have goals to work towards without it being quite as harsh a pass-fail criteria. Also, we can learn from diverse role models. The playwright Wilson Mizner said that copying one author is plagiarism, but copying many is research. In that same vein, we can learn a lot from our role models and mentors. Consul-General Fukushima mentioned that you don't have to have just one mentor. Try to find multiple mentors, and you can kind of create an amalgamation of the information that they share with you. And that's what I would suggest. Find their habits and their strengths that really speak to you and emulate them, kind of adjusting them to make them your own. Because really that's what growing as a leader means. It means stretching the limits of who we are and what we can do. So doing new things that make us uncomfortable, but that teach us through direct experience who we want to be and who we will become. I'm not suggesting a wholesale makeover by any means, but do be open to allow and welcome small changes as you evolve. Bring your authentic, wonderful self to everything you do. And on that note, after sharing a few of my thoughts, I'm going to next turn the presentation over, just one second. Okay, to Eiko Ishii. Eiko was co-founder with her husband of the think tank consultancy Seawell Institute in 2000. Eiko has created and organized numerous projects to educate Japanese communication companies focusing on global business. She was instrumental in organizing the US-Japan Critical Infrastructure Protection Forum, which began in 2004 and was held annually for 14 years thereafter. Coming from a bilingual and bicultural family background, Eiko, from an early age, embraced the important role of promoting US-Japan bilateral cooperation. Eiko's grandfather was the youngest member of the Japanese delegation in attendance at the peace treaty signing in Versailles in 1920. His function as a translator interested her from the time she was a young girl. Prior to her family's move to Chicago, Illinois, in conjunction with her father's career and where she received higher education, Eiko was born in Kobe and raised and educated in Tokyo, Japan. And with that, I ask Eiko to please join us, and I will turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Jody, for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And I'm Eiko Ishii. 日本語で言いますと、石井恵美子です。よろしくお願いします。It is my great pleasure to be here and participate this 6th annual Women's Leadership Forum as a panel this year. Thank you to Japan-American Society of Tennessee for this opportunity. And Consul-General Fukushima happened to mention coincidentally about Mrs. Sadako Ogata. She was famous UN worker, humanitarian worker in Japan. She is the one I've been looking up as a role model all my years. So I'd like to speak a little more about Mrs. Ogata here. And she was the leading humanitarian who lived in those conflict zones of the world year after year and give first-hand help to the refugees. I'm not a biographer at all, and Mrs. Ogata, because she's very well known, you can find her bio in details on internet anywhere. So I will just touch upon a little bit what I need to explain to you how I look up her. Mrs. Ogata, Sadako Ogata, was born in 1927 in Tokyo, but her father was a diplomat, and he took his family to US, China, and Hong Kong while Sadako was 4 to 11 years old. After returning to Japan, she was educated in Tokyo, but he hired a tutor to keep her English study on. And after graduating from University of the Sacred Heart, Mrs. Ogata went back to the United States, studied Georgetown University for her Master in International Relations, and UC Berkeley receiving PhD there in political science. Mrs. Ogata remained in academia and taught in schools there, and not until 1968, she stepped towards the United Nations offices in Tokyo upon request from a lady politician, and she was appointed as Japanese minister for the United Nations. Following that, her involvement to UN committees expanded to UNICEF and UN Commission on Human Rights, and in 1991, Mrs. Ogata became the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and served until 2000. She was very first and only lady to take on that head role at the UNHCR office, and of course, the first Japanese national to be in that position in any UN offices. Before retiring in 2012, she was president of JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, for 9 years. I hope I can interest and motivate everyone to access more information on her remarkable and quite impressive achievement as a humanitarian on internet. I certainly recommend you all to know one lady from Japan led the UNHCR office in post-Cold War era to save so many lives. She was a true bilingual and multicultural individual with global view. Mrs. Ogata is definitely a leader, mentor and role model to many female business and society leaders, and to the girls, future leaders, still now. She was born with exuding energy and unwavering principles. That's what my father once said. He engaged in international financial business, and he was a contemporary to her. I must say he was a lucky one because he met Mrs. Ogata personally. Writing about her reminded me of my father saying, being very impressed. She amazes everyone. Every time she speaks, that tiny lady. Yes, she was a 5-foot giant, according to a newspaper in Europe. Or she was 5 foot with shoes, as her ex-coworker says. What made her so strong and successful growing up in old Japanese society? I think one of the reasons was the way she was raised. Her parents encouraged her to question and be curious. Her assistant once told me, Mrs. Ogata always welcomed questions, well-thought questions. She would take time to listen and guide the inquirer to the answer, not giving Mrs. Ogata's version of answer straight out. Mrs. Ogata is a mentor to role models to anyone even now after passing a year ago in October. She had compassion to represent refugees to achieve their human security. She was always at the location and being curious to find out what the best way to solve the issue to let those refugees live would be. And she asked and researched while the issue existed by meeting the refugees, soldiers, and politicians of the state involved. Once she reflected the solution she reached in Iraq and said, all the challenges cannot be dealt with if you are not creative. Rules and past examples could simply be hindrance. Think around those rules and not be afraid to change them. Through her remarkable years as a leading humanitarian worker, she has taught everyone to be compassionate, curious, and creative, and be in the field. My interpreter friend heard Mrs. Ogata making remarks that she happened to be a Japanese, but she thinks herself rather as a citizen of the globe. Since each nation cannot exist alone, so all the people need to have a global point of view to find ways to support each other. Then, only then, the human beings can achieve peace, she said. I surely hope we all will agree and move towards this vision. One more of her word I really would like to deliver to you ladies today is, do not make being female your handicap. It is you who decides. So be a positive human instead. That's the word from the true leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Echo, for sharing such a great legacy that Ms. Ogata had. Next, I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Terry Vo. With over 10 years of domestic and international community engagement experience, Terry Vo brings her expertise to Comcast on the External Affairs team, where she manages government and community affairs in the Tennessee region. Terry has opened 8 computer labs throughout Middle Tennessee and connected over 250,000 Tennesseans to the power of the internet through Comcast's Internet Essentials program. She played a critical role in Comcast's $1 million investment into Tech Hill Commons that is designed to foster innovation, promote business, and develop students and tech professionals in Nashville. She was recently recognized as a Circle of Success Award recipient for her outstanding work at Comcast. Terry, it's a pleasure to have you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jody and Jas, for having me today. I am so honored to be included with such brilliant and accomplished women: Consul-General Fukushima, President Whiteside, Echo-san, and Jody. Can you all be my mentors? While I was preparing to speak to you all today, I reflected on what positive female role models I had growing up. Role models included Christy Yamaguchi, Michelle Kwan, and Lisa Ling, while mentors included my mom, my sister, my academic and orchestra teachers. Even though I could not and still cannot ice skate to save my life, I watched Christy win the Olympic gold in 1992 in figure skating. Winning gold is so amazing and all, but really why I admired Christy was because I learned that she was born with club feet and had casts to correct her condition. She started skating at the age of 6 as physical therapy, and look where those ice skates have taken her. She made me see how the seemingly impossible become possible. And I've always kept that in the back of my mind. Make the seemingly impossible possible in your life. A role model is an individual whose example is looked up to and imitated by others. Mentors, on the other hand, have a personal relationship with you where they can help you succeed. That's what I'm going to dive into today. I've had several mentors along my path, like you've heard President Whiteside said earlier, some that have been in my life since I was born, while others that have stayed for a few years and others for just a season. One of my first mentors was my piano teacher, Miss Mary. She taught me how to play the piano, and one of the first adult figures in my life that I trusted and had a relationship with. She knew that I was going through my songs, but was not practicing my foundational lessons, such as my scales, diligently. The lesson that I learned early on was practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. Then I had a mentor who wasn't the best fit for me. It's really funny because just like President Whiteside, I had a violin teacher. I played violin since I was 12. And so my teacher was Karen, and she was my high school violin teacher. And even though she was the best violin teacher in town, the concert mistress of the symphony, we just didn't have a genuine connection. We were working towards my goals, but it was just really difficult. So even though our relationship didn't last as long as either one of us had hoped, I still learned something from our relationship. One of the most valuable lessons I learned from her that has served me well is to be early is to be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be unprofessional. So then fast forward, I get into college, and I'm at the University of Arkansas, and it's my senior year, and I applied for the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. In case you don't know what it is a grassroots exchange program for young professionals who want to teach English or work in a local government office in Japan. I was really fortunate to have upperclassmen who had already applied or were currently on the program who could speak to me candidly. I needed their mentorship to better understand that the JET program was a viable option for me. I had never worked abroad before, but I saw that they were doing it, and not just doing it, they were successful at it. So I believed that I could too. After I completed my 2 years in Yatsushidoshi, which is in Kumamoto Prefecture, I returned to the States and became the JET program coordinator at the Consulate-General of Japan in Nashville. That's why I ended up here, not to play music like many people think, but to work for the consulate. It was my turn to mentor and answer questions to those who were wondering if the JET program was the right place and right thing for them. The mentors I had in my life right around then were just a few years older than me and really helped me to understand struggles that I could possibly face, and they gave me the assurances that I had a lot of support. Have you all ever struggled with imposter syndrome or thinking you weren't capable of doing something? I was having lunch with another mentor that periodically checked on me because we had both been Rotary Ambassador Scholars, just a decade apart. I brought up the idea of purchasing a home, but shared my concerns and doubts. After listening to me, my mentor said, "Terry, you can buy a house." I'm proud to say that I listened to my mentor and not my doubts. I took the necessary next steps in finding a realtor, setting a budget, and knowing what type of dwelling I was looking for. Had it not been for that frank conversation with my mentor, I would have most likely delayed the home buying process. Today, 1 in 3 young people will grow up without a mentor. This disconnects them from the critical resources to help them through life. As an adult, I have recognized how important it is for a young person to have a champion or advocate in their life. I'm currently a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee through my company, Comcast's Beyond School Walls program. Pre-COVID, we were matched with mentees, or littles as we call them, from Jerry Baxter Middle School. Our littles would come to our office twice a month, and we would spend one-on-one time building a relationship, helping them not only with their academic work, but what's going on in their life, and really be a sounding board and someone else that they could trust. So as you all know, we are in the middle of this pandemic, so we've had to pivot. So what did we do? So for our program, we are now pivoting to an e-mentoring program with high school students. So I'll be helping a local high school student get college prep ready. I've been a mentor for the past 5 years, and it has been incredibly fulfilling. It's given me the opportunity to stay connected to youth and really encourage and support my little in whatever her dreams are. As you can see through a few of my stories, not all mentor and mentee relationships are perfect, and that's totally normal and okay. Having been in several, I wanted to share a few things to keep in mind as you are seeking to be or find a mentor as well as being a mentee. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So first, we're going to talk about being a mentor. So a couple things you can think about. Do you have a desire to develop and help others? Do you have the ability and availability to commit real time and energy to the mentoring relationship? Because I want to tell you, mentoring takes time. Do you have current or relevant industry or organizational knowledge, expertise, and skills? And I added this one in here if you're really looking for a professional mentor or want to be one. Are you willing to share your failures and personal experiences? I really think it's important to remember to share how I did it right, but also how I did it wrong, because they're both valuable opportunities for learning. Do you have a growth mindset and learning attitude? I promise you, even though I have worked and lived, in Japan, I am still always curious and wanting to learn even more about Japan and Japanese culture and the language. And so always wanting to deepen your knowledge is critical. And then, do you have the skills in developing others? What do I mean by that? Are you an active listener? Do you ask powerful, open-ended questions? What about self-reflection and providing feedback? All those are really critical for being a great mentor or someone you're looking for in a mentor. And then next, I want to talk about being a mentee. Are you committed to expanding your capabilities and focus on achieving professional or personal results? Are you clear about your goals, needs, and wants? It's really important to remember that it's the mentee's responsibility to create the mentoring agenda. Are you willing to ask for help, show vulnerability, and explore different paths and perspectives? Are you able to seek and accept feedback? And just like Jody said, especially constructive criticism, and act upon it? Are you ready to be personally responsible and accountable? I want to tell you, as a mentor, I want to see movement and growth. Whenever at when my little Terry-on, at the beginning of the school year, we had academic goals and house goals. For example, helping more around the house, cleaning up, and then improving her grades. And so even if we got that, one letter grade moved up, or even a percentage point up, that's what we're looking for, and encouraging her that she's doing great. And last but not least, are you willing and able to meet on a regular basis? I know right now, like we're meeting on Zoom, and we have Zoom fatigue, as we've all talked about, but make it something that you can keep up with and be committed to. And so my last thing, take a moment, jot in your journal, scrap paper, or on your phone, ask yourself, where am I right now in my life? Where do I need guidance or growth? Where can I give? I really hope that some of the prompts that I shared with you today can help you figure out where you can be a mentor and or mentee. Before I close, I want to share one of my favorite mentor and mentee relationships. Believe it or not, even Oprah had a mentor, and it was none other than Maya Angelou. If I could have been a fly on the wall during their sessions, I would totally be a fly. So Oprah said, Maya was there for me always, guiding me through some of the important years of my life. Mentors are important, and I don't think anybody makes it in the world without some form of mentorship. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Terry. That was fantastic. I especially appreciate that you had call to action points for both people who want to mentor as well as mentees, people looking to be mentored. So thank you so much for sharing that and some concrete steps that we can all take to kind of put this in place in our own lives. Just as a reminder, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If anybody would like to ask any questions to Terry or Echo, please feel free to submit them, and we'll invite Echo back with us. Thank you. And while we wait for some of those, I appreciate that we now have some concrete steps that we can take. But on the topic of mentoring, could you share a lesson that you learned, Echo, from one of your mentors?
I think the most important lesson I learned from mentor was be honest and persistent. It covers the same thing Terry covered. You have to be honest. Vulnerability should be out to mentors. That's your responsibility as a mentee, to give a subject. What would you like to be learned from? So that's what I learned. You need to be honest and show the vulnerability and learn more. That's my hardest and the valuable lesson I learned.
And that is hard, isn't it, to be vulnerable, regardless of if you're male or female. It's certainly a struggle, but you're right, that does make it easier for the mentorship to really make change.
Mhm.
What does it mean for each of you to be authentic? Terry, do you want to take this first?
Sure. I guess for me, being authentic has to come like from a real place within. I think it's our actions and our words that are congruent with our beliefs and values. So for me, it's really important being true to your whole self, is being authentic and not who we think we should be. Because earlier, right, we had talked about, you make two mistakes when you're trying to be someone else. And I definitely think, all of us know it's like when you're being authentic, you're being genuine, right? You really feel that person in your life cares about you or is really listening to you and is not distracted by something else. And it goes so far when you really look into someone's eyes, you're really paying attention to them. Sometimes that's even more, right? I mean, I can't remember who said it. I should know. But it's like, people may forget like what you say, but they won't forget how they made, how you made them feel.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah,
with that too, what Terry says. And you need to give yourself, your belief will speak to your mentees. And of course, you have to be self-reliant too. You believe in yourself, then other people will believe in you. That's my authenticity. I believe in myself.
And that actually can lead into another good question. How did you get to that point where you believed in yourself or felt, had confidence?
I failed and learned. And I've lived here in Nashville 31 years, and before that, Chicago for a few years too. And so more than half of my life is in a different culture. So can be bicultural, but I failed a lot in between cultures. And that gave me courage to step forward and push myself to try another thing. So that's how I do.
So
Yeah,
failure became a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Echo. I think the word fail,
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to flip it on its head, right? When I think of fail now, I don't think negatively. I think fail means first attempt in learning. And I think, like with that, you have been able to do so much. And I think when we take failure away from the negative connotation that it has, but that it is like, you said, Jody, a next stepping stone, that's what it is, right? All of the products, we work for organizations, people are always improving, right? I work for Comcast, come on. We're always improving every day. And so I think for me also, for faith is important for me, believing in myself, and also books, I love to read. And then I think it's really important who you surround yourself with. And that will really, I think, also, you can be built up or you can be broken down. And so your time is valuable. So really think about that. Who you want to spend your time with. They say you are the average of the 5 people you most spend time with. Have you taken stock of who those 5 people are? Are they making you better? Are they making you the best version of yourself? So I think that's really important because we're always moving and we're always growing. So, if you're not where you are right now, it's okay. You can change. You can change that.
Terry, you'll appreciate Krista sent in or submitted the exact quote that you referenced. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And it was said by none other than Maya Angelou.
I know. I was like, I'm pretty sure it was Maya Angelou, but I was like, I don't want to misquote.
But and you brought up a good comment as well on self-care, something I asked our first 2 speakers, who you're spending time with and what you're doing, if you enjoy reading. But do you have any tips or comments on self-care and prioritizing as you balance, career and other life obligations?
Sure, for me, I want you guys to know I tried meditation and it lasted about 8 minutes. So I think I'll try again maybe next year. But, you know, I was really thinking like, yes, for me, you know, that self-care, but I realized it wasn't for me. You know, I'm always like on the go, and for me, self-care, like working in my garden and, you know, getting my hands dirty and growing sunflowers were really important this time. It forced me to go outside, breathe fresh air, and then watch my sunflowers grow. And from seeds to, you know, I ended up having over 200 blooms. So that was really nice. And I think we have to break, I think, our idea that self-care is something, you know, that you're doing to yourself as well. You know, like facials, I'm all about them as well, you know, and massages. But I think, you know, what is self-care that brings you joy? And I think a lot of times, you know, as women, we forget that. We forget to ask ourselves that question. So that's definitely been two things that have, you know, helped me with my own self-care routine and getting outside, you know, and being physical.
And sunflowers are perfect for that because they're basically little smiley faces.
Yes.
Echo, do you have anything that you like to do?
Yeah, I enjoy breathing exercise. Like Jody, you said you take a 10 breaths to calm yourself down and face something. But my case is breathing deep for maybe a minute or two. And it calms me down, but clear my head too. So I can face anything coming upon me on the day. So I'd like to do breathing deep in the morning. I usually wake up on the 4:30, 5 o'clock breathing. I recommend.
That's something great and easy that we can all do, even as you sit in the car on your commute or
exactly, yeah,
logging into your computer. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm going to ask President Whiteside and Consul-General Fukushima to join us back for just a moment. Thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts. I really appreciated all the points that you guys had to share, introducing Ms. Ogata to the people who didn't know her, talking about going through government and across the globe, really, Consul-General Fukushima, and Dannelle, I almost had like tears in my eyes on a couple of your stories. You were really great at sharing, and Terry, you're just super motivational. So I have some takeaways to do from your presentation as well. But so thank you, ladies, so much for sharing all your knowledge.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I think Ginger is going to join us back as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jody. And thank you all so much for your wonderful presentations and for the conversation. It was just fantastic. Consul-General Fukushima, Dannelle, Jody, Echo, Terry, it's been a pleasure, and we really appreciate you so much for doing this for us today. We also appreciate our sponsors, and I would like to thank again our presenting sponsor, Mitsui & Company USA Inc., event patron, Nissan North America, our event sponsors, B&A Nashville International Airport, Aviation Golf Classic, Bridgestone America's Trust Fund, Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, the Mitsui USA Foundation, the Japan Foundation Center for Global Partnership, and Fifth Third Bank. And thank you all very much for joining us, and I hope you have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.